What is a scary or horrifying fact that shouldn't be true, but is? Some monks used to endure a spiritual practice whereby they eliminated all their body fat through diet and exercise, ate wood lacquer tea to kill off internal bacteria, then sealed themselves in a tomb holding a string attached to a bell. A year after the bell stopped ringing, the tomb was opened, and if the monk's body was found to be uncorrupted, they were revered as a saint. If not, they were reburied. The process took years, and as they continued, the monks required more and more help from their brothers until they entered the tomb. And the whole time, you'd hear bells ringing from the nearby tombs as the monks inside slowly wound down the last days of their lives, voluntarily poisoned, starved, and buried alive for a chance at sainthood. In Mississippi and some parts of Florida, there is a bacteria in the water at the coast that will literally eat your flesh off of you. Florida is much safer than Mississippi though, at least in that aspect. There is a mosquito in Florida that, when it bites you, can make your brain swell inside of your skull and can possibly kill you. Yeah, a summer camp I was in when I was 14 had to shut down because of this. If a person gets bitten by an animal that has rabies, he will continue to live on a normal life for 12 weeks, and after the symptoms develop, there is no way he's making it out alive. You'll know you're gonna die. The Amazon forest has a huge gap of virgin forest between Brazil and other countries, places kilometers away from the nearest cities. The Brazilian Institute for Native Indians, FUNAI, has got agents overlooking tribes, and they take flights over the forest and always end up spotting huts, fire pits, and bow and arrow armed men. There are plenty of unknown tribes hiding somewhere in that huge forest, people never contacted by civilization. The fun fact is even the Institute agents have no idea of the number, types, and tribes there inside. Can't track down, accent, or detect their genealogy. Amazon forest is a complex and humid place. You can hide a family of elephants there inside, and you won't see it from the sky. Every single year, there are thousands of people in the US alone who disappear. Most of them show up again, usually the next day, sometimes a few days, a few weeks, or even a few months later. However, out of these thousands of people, there are roughly 150 people every single year who disappear and simply never appear again. Nobody knows what has happened to those people. They might be dead, or they might not be. We simply don't know. People forget sometimes just how big the world is. There is still a lot of uninhabited spaces where someone can die and simply not be discovered. You might feel like the healthiest person in the world, and yet still randomly die in your sleep. Sudden arrhythmic death syndrome is just one example. There are tons of small obstructions and irregularities that your heart could be suffering from that go completely unnoticed by you, your friends, and your doctors. You might be at an increased risk of just passing on when you go to bed tonight, and no one would even suspect as much until you actually died. A lone pilot was flying in Australia in 1978. He reported to air traffic control that he was accompanied by an aircraft above him. When asked to identify the aircraft, he replied, "It isn't an aircraft." His plane disappeared and was never to be found again. Something is eating the Milky Way galaxy. No, it isn't the plot for a Star Trek episode. It's really happening. In 2009, researchers found a cluster of galaxies moving at an extraordinary speed towards a small patch of sky between the constellations of Centaurus and Vela. Some unknown force is tearing away chunks of the galaxy, and astronomers still have no clue what exactly is causing it. It's been named dark flow. There is something big out there, far bigger than anything in our known universe. Such a behemoth would impose a kind of tilt on the universe, causing matter to move in one particular direction, as observations of the dark flow suggest. It could be anything, up to and including another universe. There's a place on Mount Everest called the Rainbow Valley, which takes its name not from the rainbows that you see from it, but from the colors of the jackets of hundreds and hundreds of corpses that lay across the valley. Pretty scary. Some of those corpses are even used as markers to navigate the climb. Green boots is one of the most notable ones. In Argentina, we have no DNA bank and a barely functional fingerprint detection system, even though we invented that bitch. Also, negligence by forensics is the norm. What does this mean? In Argentina, if you kill someone you don't like, but the cops never suspect you, you'll never ever be remotely close to being busted. In fact, anyone could get away with murdering a stranger at any anytime without previous preparation. And if they somehow catch you red-handed, a life sentence is 35 years here, with parole every couple of years. And there's a law that says that by every 2 people that get incarcerated, 1 must be freed. So there's always the chance you'll randomly get freed. Also, the average time a killer does here is between 10 and 20 years. The fact that we don't murder each other as much means anarchy could possibly work, I guess. I watched a YouTube video not too long ago that explained how heads stay alive for about 30 seconds after being beheaded. The guy who found this out worked with a prisoner who was sentenced to be beheaded, and they worked out a plan to see how long the beheaded guy's head would react to the stimulus. As I write this post, millions of Uyghurs in rural China are being tortured and killed by the world's second most influential government, and not one country has had the moral character to take action. At some point in the future, our descendants will ask why so many people were allowed to be treated so inhumanely for so long. The only real response will be, we didn't want our supply of cheap stuff to be cut off. Absolute cowardice. The oubliette, or the forgotten room, as translated into English, in medieval times, people would be descended into these rooms, which were like 35 feet deep below the ground as punishment. They were narrow and funnel-shaped, with the only way in or out being through a trapdoor in the roof, through which they are lowered down in the first place. Kings and lords would torture people by keeping them in the oubliette because these rooms would be so narrow, there would be no place to sit or even turn. These prisoners would be left there to starve while standing 24 hours and 7 days a week to their death. Sometimes, among the bones and human waste of the inmates who had died before them, the only light, if there was any, would come from the trapdoor on the roof. There would be absolutely no chance of escape, as it was impossible to climb up the walls of the narrow passage. These were designed to inflict tremendous psychological torture on the prisoner, often leading them into delirium. Absolute horror as to what we are capable of doing to our fellow human beings. Oh, I have a terrible one. The true dangers of scurvy. Bones that had previously broken re-break. Old wounds open up again. This is because one of the major effects of scurvy is that the body can no longer produce collagen, the glue of the body's cells. The cartilage, especially around the thorax, begins to disappear. Eat your citrus, y'all. I don't know if it's scary, but whales fall. The deep sea scares me. When whales die in deep cold water, they sink instead of float and do not decompose as quickly. Bringing huge amounts of biomass to deep waters causes underwater creatures to grow rapidly, forming communities around the dead whale. This can force evolution or genetic mutations when creatures are rapidly reproducing. Deep sea creatures have weird phenotypes and genotypes, so maybe Cthulhu or Atlantis exists. I have a story for you. First of all, you don't have to get bit to contract rabies. If their mucus touches your mucous membrane, think mouth or nose, you can still contract rabies. I once got drunk, fed a raccoon an Oreo from my mouth, and its nose touched the inside of my nostril. It seemed harmless and made for a cool story. A friend that took a video of it got it posted to Barstool Outdoors. A day or so went by, and I got a call from the CDC telling me to go get a rabies vaccination to avoid contracting the disease. You bet your sweet I got to the clinic as quickly as I could. The vaccine is administered over several weeks and is expensive as fuck. Moral of the story, don't mess with wild rodents. But wild rodents are so cute. Here's a fact you probably haven't heard before. Chickens can survive for up to 18 months after being decapitated, although most of them die within an hour. So, in reality, the horrifying part of this is that each chicken being killed for food had a slow, agonizing death. Disturbing fact. It is estimated that the number of vertebrate animals used every year for experimentation ranges between the tens of millions and 100 million. This does not include the number of non-vertebrates also used. Laws ensuring that the experimentation is not needlessly cruel and inhumane are often non-existent, minimal, and or only apply to select species, meaning that in the majority of cases, it is entirely legal to perform any kind of experiment on the majority of lab animals with no ethical oversight whatsoever, or even the most minimal concern for the animal's welfare. This is justified in the name of human progress. Here in Russia, we have the highest male suicide rate in the world. 2 of my family members ended themselves, uncle and cousin, not related. And everyone pretended it didn't happen, like they died accidentally, because no one fucking cares. Yesterday, I've heard how the woman said to her son, "No, don't cry. You're a man, aren't you? How convenient. In my husband's family, they don't have a single man who lived longer than 65, and 2 of my male family members died while working. Were they even considered to be humans? Or just money-making machines who had zero rights to have emotions?" In Russia, many people say, her money is her money, his money is a family budget. Quite frankly, I just got tired of my male family members dying, and yet everyone ignores it, because it just doesn't matter. And people moan about not getting their Frappuccino order right here in the States. And, well, some odds and ends of human rights. The Beast of Gévaudan is a well-documented story of a beast that terrorized the French countryside in the early 18th century. It was described as a huge, hyena-like creature the size of a horse. It was active periodically for several years. Many times, it was claimed to be killed, but ultimately, it always returned. This creature killed about 200 actual people, and nobody could do anything about it. The King of France once sent his own heavily armored horsemen regiment to catch it. Soldiers killed like 6,000 wolves all over the Gévaudan province, but never caught it. Terror Beast was finally said to be put to rest only when some hunter shot it right through the heart with an actual silver bullet. Yes, that actually happened. Bull sharks can survive in fresh water. They have been found in the Mississippi River in the USA as far as Alton, Illinois, which is about 700 miles upriver from the coast, and in the Ohio River near Manchester, Ohio. One was found about 2,500 miles upriver in the Amazon near Iquitos, Peru. They are also known for being aggressive and account for the majority of shark attacks on humans. Color is not real. It's just messages as your brain processes the light hitting your eyes as it reflects off of different surfaces. Everything is actually probably gray. Also, there is no actual sound. Sound is just another message created by your brain to translate sound waves. They are like other waves, like microwaves, etc. But your brain can pick up sound waves and then it processes them and creates the sound you think you're hearing. But in actuality, there is no sound, only silent waves. Despite the homicide rate going down over the decades, murders are now less likely to be solved. So now, despite the police dealing with less crime, more forensics, better technology, and better surveillance, murders are less likely to be solved? The debate on why is pretty unclear, but most cops blamed witnesses for not coming forward with relevant information quickly enough. So basically, people are too scared of the police to come forward because of things like false accusations, police brutality, and being charged with petty crimes. To date, 6 nuclear warheads have been lost by the US, which have never been recovered. Their suspected locations are classified by the Defense Department, which reserves the sole right to inform the public if they are suspected of being in danger, but may or may not do so, depending on the situation. To clarify, far more than 6 nuclear warheads have at one point or another been classified as missing or stolen, but the others have been successfully recovered or decommissioned. Not sure if it's more or less frightening to know that more than 6 nuclear weapons have been lost but recovered. When people think ad companies listen to your conversation to suggest ads, they actually predict your behavior based on mass data collection. Their algorithms pick up on trends within your demographic, even for things that seem out of left field. Advertising probably knew you were going to mention it to your partner before you did.